protecting our liberty.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Your Right to Know, brought to you by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. I'm going to be your co-host today, Andrew Couture, and joining me is my fellow co-host, Mary Lotze, and a very special guest today is Steve Aylward. Stephen is a political activist who spearheaded Stop the Gas Tax 2 years ago and is currently a candidate for the chairman of the Mass GOP. Now, today's program is going to be based upon, there's a problem in the GOP in Massachusetts. We all know that North Central Mass has been going red for a long time. In fact, over the last several years, we've seen that. And yet recently, in the November 2016 presidential election, we might as well have stayed home. Although the state had a record turnout of 75%, 3.4 million voters came out, and there's 4.5 million registered voters in Massachusetts. So a resounding election, to say the least. But Democrats got 60% of the vote, to the Republicans 32.8. Even the Libertarians of Gary Johnson and former Mass Governor Bill Weld got 4.2% of the vote. Although there were several tens of thousands of new voters registered for the November election, many registered unenrolled voters were expected to vote Republican. Nothing much changed. And when you look at the election outcome, it basically breaks down to 53% of unenrolled in Massachusetts, 35% of Democrat in Massachusetts, and only 11% of Republican. Bottom line, the GOP has got to start winning some elections in this state. Even with a candidate like Donald Trump, who was able to appeal to the working and tax-paying voters throughout the nation, Massachusetts didn't show up. And we're here to discuss that today. And I'd first like to introduce Steve Aylward. Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Good, Andrew. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
I'd like to briefly discuss some of your efforts on Stop the Gas Tax.
Well, in 2014, we put together a ballot question which we thought would bring out Republican voters and would help Charlie Baker get elected, which in fact it did. Because of the ballot question, and he actually thanked us publicly for our efforts on the ballot question. Just because of that ballot question, we did make Martha Coakley look a little silly with her 10-cent comment. And then on top of that, we brought out the vote, which pushed Charlie Baker over the top. So ballot questions are critical when it comes to getting voters out. They have to have things to come out for. They may like the governor, they may be lukewarm on the governor, on people running for office, but ballot questions are an emotional thing and they bring people out. That's why we were very happy to be involved in that. We were outspent 31-1. We won that ballot question, and it was probably the greatest victory for the taxpayers in Massachusetts in 25 years. So,
it was. Now, this inability to make inroads in Massachusetts, is that part of the makeup of Massachusetts? Are we just naturally a liberal state and want to support liberal views? Or is it something more specific, like the Democratic Party is stronger in Massachusetts? More insidiously, altering school curriculum and grade in high schools, college that only hire liberal professors, passing of liberal progressive laws, regulations, and policies, wide-scale support of unions, and who supports the unions, who support the Dems with money and influence in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I mean, there's many factors that go into it, but here's what you want to look at. Even in liberal Connecticut, they pulled even in the House with the Democrats. The Republicans and the Democrats in their House of Representatives is even now. So we saw all those gains everywhere, but we did not see them in Massachusetts. And certainly, Trump didn't spend a lot of money here. We know that. But I think because the Mass GOP and the governor's office didn't really actively support Trump, we didn't get a lot of people to turn out. On top of that, you couple that with the fact that we had 40 Republican-friendly seats that we didn't even run someone for. We didn't even have a candidate to run. That hurt us because, again, people didn't come out. And what's so important about running candidates in a presidential year is that when you run a candidate in a presidential year, you're not going to win, probably, because the turnout is going to be more Democratic. All the college kids are going to come out, all of that. But you want to set the stage for the gubernatorial year where we hope to do better. And candidates, if they run in the presidential year, they are going to put together an infrastructure. They're going to learn how to be a candidate. They're going to come on shows like this. They're going to develop a donor base. And that's what we have to be doing looking forward. So I'm a little bit discouraged that we didn't do better in Massachusetts with Trump, but also we didn't really set the stage for 2018, and that's something we really have to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that you mentioned is Trump didn't spend a lot of money in Massachusetts, but Mary and I and a few of the fellow Fitchburg Republican members, he had a place. He had a rally in Worcester, sold out. In fact, there were people lining up around the block. He also had one in Lowell. That's right. And I know, Mary, you went up to New Hampshire for some
of the border several times to see him. Yes.
And these venues were basically sold out to capacity.
And it's important that we do that in Massachusetts too, Andrew. They make a good point because New Hampshire is not far away. And look how close New Hampshire was. It was actually stolen. We know that. But if we had had more opportunity here, more things going on here, more people active, if we had had the Mass GOP more engaged in getting things together, we could have kept Hillary a little bit more at home here. Maybe she would have stopped in once or twice. Maybe she wouldn't have gone there as much. Maybe we would have had more engagement. We would have been able to stop a lot of those kids from going over the border to register for vote the same day. So Massachusetts does play a role. Even though we're probably not going to win, we can keep the Democrats at home. And that's another reason for us to be active in these presidential campaigns, even if we can't win.
Now, Governor Baker, very public in his open denunciation of Trump's presidency. Governor Baker is very popular in the state. In fact, I think he's probably still voted the most popular governor in all of the U.S. Do you think that if he would have supported Donald Trump and Mike Pence, would that have made the difference?
No, maybe not made the whole difference, but I think it would have helped. It certainly would have helped if he had done so, because by not supporting Trump, again, the enthusiasm factor goes down. We needed many more people to come out. Maybe we would have won a few more tickets, a few more races down tickets, which we only picked up one, I think. Maybe we would have won 2, 3, 4. Maybe we would have retained our sheriff position up in Essex County, which we lost. So there's many, many reasons for the governor to want to be engaged on top of it. And now, as we go forward and Trump's the president, how much out of favor is Massachusetts now?
That was actually going to be my next question. Do you think that's going to hurt Massachusetts in general, nationally?
Well, who can predict what Donald Trump is going to do? But he seems to know what's going on. He seems to know who helped him and who didn't. And he doesn't seem like a man who tolerates lack of support well. I mean, he was gracious with Romney, but I'm not sure I know exactly what was going on there. But I think it is going to hurt us. And I think it would have behooved the governor, I think, to be more engaged with the Trump campaign.
And Andrew, there was an article in this morning's Boston Herald, and the article was about Carmen Ortiz, who is the U.S. attorney that was appointed for Massachusetts by President Obama. Now that President Obama's term is coming to an end, Carmen Ortiz's position is coming to an end. Right. She actually has stepped down early in advance of the end of her term. However, up to this point, the Trump campaign, it has been reported, has not contacted the Charlie Baker office or Karen Polito office, the governor or lieutenant governor at all, to ask for their input or suggestions, recommendations on a U.S. attorney for the state of Massachusetts. And the question people are asking, that's really unorthodox. Normally, your senior political person is the one that's contacted for recommendations and, a heads up on some talented people, but it hasn't happened. The question is that because Governor Charlie Baker did not support Trump.
Yep.
And is this a preview of coming attractions on other things?
And that's certainly as likely as not. And you're right. We have a lot of good candidates who could fill that job, like a Lou Evangelitis, like a Tom Hodgson. We have and Mike Sullivan, who was the former U.S. attorney under
and
Bush.
He ran for senator.
He ran for senator. And the thing about that is now you move someone up into that position. Now you put him in a position as U.S. attorney to go further running for office, and somebody else, maybe some other Republican, can fill the role of the existing sheriff or whatever. So that's why, to answer your question, I think in retrospect, maybe Charlie Baker is thinking twice about his decision. So.
Incidentally, if Charlie Baker's watching this, or even President-elect Trump, I happen to be an attorney, so I'd be available. Now, in one of Donald Trump's thank you tours in Pennsylvania, he remarked that this was the first time that Pennsylvania voters voted for a Republican since 1988. I was 11 years old. That is almost 30 years. So why is it that other states can make this political transition, but Massachusetts seemed to be stuck in the mud?
Well, first of all, I wasn't 11 years old. However, again, how do we play politics here in Massachusetts with the Democrats? I think too often we play nice. We don't want to be labeled as those mean Republicans, and I think we have to play hardball. There was an article in the Globe today about the Democrats, and now they're coming after Baker for the corner office. And Baker has tried to be nice to them, and he's done a good job working with them, but they don't care. Now they're going to, and this was in O'Sullivan's article, they're going to level everything on Baker. Everything that Trump does, they're going to pin it on Baker. So even though Baker has tried to work with these people, that you cannot work with the Democrats. You cannot be nice to them. It's a blood sport. They bring a gun, we bring a Watt pistol. We have to learn that they are not our friends. And if Trump taught us one thing, if nothing else, he taught us what I've always said, that we have to define the Democrats, not let them define us. And you think back to 2012, we had a great candidate in Mitt Romney, and he got defined by Obama. Obama brilliantly defined him as an out-of-touch rich guy, the 47%, binders full of women, and Romney, because he's such a nice guy, could never fight back. Think about it. First time in my memory, crooked Hillary rotten Clinton, Trump defined his opponent, and that's why he won. He did not let her get away with the nonsense that they usually get away with. That's a lesson that we need to learn in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, because I remember 2012 watching the debates and just yelling at the TV, Mitt Romney, go for it, just start hitting him. And, that didn't happen. He lost. Trump, one of the most brilliant points in the debates was when Hillary Clinton said, well, it's a good thing you're not in control of the government. And he goes, yeah, because you'd be in jail. Best line, and probably the most memorable, I think, so far.
Right.
And that's exactly what we need to do. We need to start hitting them as hard as they hit us.
Right. But to do that, we can't be embarrassed by our message either. We are Republicans, we are pro-gun, we are conservative, we're pro just common sense type of things like the elimination of Common Core, the repeal of the bathroom bill. We don't have to get heavy into the social issues, but we can't be embarrassed to say that we understand that there are quality of life issues that we have to stand up for. And so I hope that as we go forward as a party, we learn those things and we're not embarrassed, we're not defined by them, and we're not embarrassed by who we are.
Well, I mean, that you bring up a good point. Charlie Baker, he's allowing Maura Healey. I'm a gunner. I am an enthusiast of firearms. Maura Healey just did, a few months ago, back in the summer, huge gun grab. Yep. Charlie Baker's done nothing.
Right.
We have to start fighting back.
Right. And the gun issue aside, the Second Amendment rights that they're taking away from us aside, that's why Republicans stay home. When they see that our leadership doesn't fight for what we believe in, they get irritated, and for lack of a better word, they stay home. We need all those people to come out.
I know that a lot of Democrat friends that I have, not too many, but a lot of Democrat friends that I have that are pro-gunners, they're equally as frustrated.
Yep.
You know, and even though they're Democrat, they still like their guns.
Yeah.
So they're right on that border. Could we push these people over?
I think we could. Absolutely. I mean, I think Trump showed us that. We need to learn the lessons that Trump taught us, and that was one of the things. We can move the Democrats to our side. I think a lot of the Democrats are more Republican than they realize, and we can do it.
Well, and that's kind of a question that I had as I'm listening to this conversation. Are we not defining ourselves? Do you think most people out there, many voters, just do not understand Republicanism and what we really stand for? Because we're not defining ourselves well?
We're not defining ourselves, and we're timid. And we need to use every avenue. We don't have the resources that the Democrats have. So we have to figure out, first of all, what our message is. And there's some infighting inside the Republican Party over what our message should be. But there's a lot of things we really should agree on. And then we need to be able to go out there, and we need to use every medium that there is to get our message across. Something like this, we were talking about this earlier. You know, a cable TV show, letters to the editor, blogging, online type of things. Even getting into the schools, and anytime we can, speaking proudly about what we believe in. It's incremental, but that's how we won the gas tax. We won the gas tax. We were all spent 31-1, but we used every medium there was to get our message out. And that's what we have to start doing. And to do that, we need to grow the RTCs, we need to respect the RTCs, we need to get more people involved in them, and that all comes up by confidence in our leadership. And unfortunately, there is a lack of confidence in our leadership right now, and we need to do a better job at that.
How do you grow the Republican Party? How do you recruit good, solid Republican candidates? Andrew before brought up the statistical difference. 11% Republicans in the state, 35% registered Democrats in the state, about 53% unenrolled. Probably most of those tend to lean left to the more liberal side. So with those numbers as they are, you're looking at a good candidate, you're asking a good, solid candidate, Andrew was one of them, to step out of your daily life.
Right.
In addition to your daily life, we're going to ask you to work 24/7 away from your family, spend your hours, your time, your free time, your family time, and really push forward on this agenda to run for public office, and yet you're only representing 11% of the population that you hope will come out and support you ultimately. How do you recruit people with those odds?
It's complex. There's no one easy answer to it. Certainly, I always believe that nothing grows from the top down. You know, it has to grow from the bottom up. So we need to do a better job of recruiting people at a local level. We need to get our message out to get more people to become Republicans. And then when we get those people into place, then we need to develop candidates. Well, how do you get a candidate to run for office, to run for local office? How do you get them to win in a Democrat state? Again, a ballot question. You push forth an emotional issue. So I'll give you one great example of what I want to do when I become chair, is in the odd years, 2017, I want to put ballot questions on as many local community ballots as I can. And the one thing I want to do is I want to give those communities the ability to opt out of question 4, marijuana sales in their community, which they can do. It's going to be a very emotional issue. It's going to bring out a lot of Republicans. It's going to allow us to identify Republicans. No one's not going to vote. No Republican is not going to vote for that. In the meantime, they will support our Republican candidates for selectmen, for mayor, for whatever. And that's one way we'll grow the party, using ballot questions. Just like we successfully did it with question 1 in 2014, you can do it at the lower levels, at the local level. And it only takes, in most towns, I think, 100 signatures to get something onto the ballot. So it's an easy thing to do. It engages people. Instead of our RTCs sitting around in meetings and talking about things, would actually give them something to do, to get out and do it. And again, now it grows from the bottom up. Now the local candidate for a selectman gets elected. Now he's in a position to run for one of those 40 Republican-friendly seats for the state. So it's not easy. There's no one good answer. It's really just the ability to bring together many factions at once, many issues at once, and bring them together and make it work as a fine, well-oiled machine.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Do you think that is what sent a wave of Democrats was the legalization of marijuana bill that was just recently on the ballot. Also, they had the animal
cruelty, farm rights or
barn rights or whatever it is.
Oh yeah. I think the Democrats are better at this game than we are.
To tell you the truth, I never linked that before. This is fascinating.
And you know what they did at the local level too, I think you know this, is they put the CPA tax in effect. Now we had beaten that CPA tax in Watertown, but it was on the off year. It was in a local election. But what they did this time, in the local areas, is they put the CPA tax on the ballot in like 20 communities, and it won in like 15 or 17 of them. I'm throwing big numbers around here, but you get the point, is that the things they wanted to pass that they couldn't pass at a local level with low turnout, they did it in a presidential year. So we have to be in tune with the idea of using ballot questions, whether it's statewide or at a local level, to improve our ability to get candidates elected and to improve our quality of life.
Well, it was interesting because I work at the election polls on election day. I work here in Fitchburg, and I was kind of astounded. It wasn't an enormous number, but it was a significant number of people who actually came out and did not vote for president, did not vote for any candidates, but voted for the ballot question. Number 4. The marijuana. So that proves the point, and I never linked it before. The ballot question drove turnout. One of the things that I have been amazed, and I think that Republicans really ought to look at watching President-elect Donald Trump, regardless if people out there like him, I think he's teaching us a lot about how to sell a message, sell a party, sell himself, which of course we know he's good at. Just last week, Donald Trump had to the Trump Tower. In like 1 or 2 days, he had Bill Gates, sports icons, Ray Lewis and Jim Brown, a designer, Anna Wintour, Kanye West. I mean, who would have thought? The next, Al Gore with Leonardo DiCaprio. The next day, he had all the honchos of Silicon Valley. And what that's telling me, obviously, maybe out of that group, one person, if he's lucky, voted for him. What he's doing is he is inviting people who don't think like he does, who don't have the same philosophies as he does, but he's ingratiating them in a very warm and public way to come and meet with him. Now, they may never find common ground. They may find common ground on a morsel of an issue, but it's very public, and he's doing it. And do we need to do that as the state?
And he understands the media too, and he understands that a picture really is worth 1,000 words. And what does he do after every one of these meetings? He goes out into the lobby and he has his photo shoot, and whether he went up in that room and said, I don't even care what you have to say, that's not how it's perceived, because everybody sees the nice picture, everybody sees him with his arm around Conway West or whoever he is.
It's laughable.
But we need to do more of that. We need to understand the perception is reality, and we need to do that type of stuff. And we need to do, if you just take it a step further, one of the things we look at how we're perceived. We're perceived as the grouchy old white guy, white woman who doesn't care about anybody, just cares about themselves. Now, we as Republicans know that's not the case. I don't know any rich Republicans. I wish I did. Every Republican I know owns a gas station or works hard, is just you know, run the mill type of guy. We need to understand that and go from there. We just don't seem to understand that we need to show people that the Republican Party is not the old Yankees that it was.
Sure.
Now, on the national stage, Donald Trump had a solid, resonating message to the voters. He also knew how to use social media. With a platform megaphone to help reach out to middle America like no other Republican candidate has done in the past. Yet, this is not as easy on the state level, where TV media doesn't reach out past 495. What is a successful Republican message that will resonate throughout the state, and what's the best way to get that message out to the voters, especially for local, regional, and district-wide candidates?
That's a lot of question there, Andrew. I mean, well, like I said before, I mean, I think at the low level where we don't, you're right, the media is not coming at us saying, hey, let's cover you, let's cover what you're doing. We need to be proactive. We need to be the ones who go out there on Facebook. We need to train our RTCs on how to use social media too. Facebook ads, things like that, things that are very, very powerful. And we need to do more of that, so.
Now, nationally, it appears that presidential-elect Donald Trump has united the Republican Party and has proven to even bring along large united unenrolled blocks of minority and women voters. Can Governor Baker do the same thing?
I think he can. You know, I think he is a very, very effective governor, and I think he's done a lot of good things. I think sometimes running the party and running the state are two different things. You have to work with the with the other party to do it. So he really needs to concentrate on running the state. And I think if he runs the state as well as I think he's going to in the future, I think we're going to add to our Republican numbers. I really, really do. But again, I think if he's trying to do everything, if he's trying to define our message, if he's trying to run the state is working off. And then run the party, I think it's just too much.
Well, thank you, Steve. Unfortunately, that's the end of our program. I would like to thank everybody for watching Your Right to Know and sitting in with the FRCC. As we leave you, we want you to remember that your local city-town Republican committee is the only grassroots to hold dear your liberty, your constitutional rights, and conservative values. We encourage you to join us. Why? Because to us, GOP stands for growth, prosperity, growth, opportunity, and prosperity. And because we always stand for America. Thank you.
America, we stand for freedom. So let us all unite to yearn and strive for our reflects our values, that preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values, and preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might.